Can I just pick you up on something you said about public procurement? In fact, I agreed with what you said, that the government is often legalistic in terms of how it views. Can you just explain why, if this is true, that the Cabinet Office oppose if there is public procurement, companies bidding for public procurement should be compelled to at least have 1 or 2 apprentices?
Well, I'm very much opposed to freighting public procurement with wider policy objectives. I want public procurement to be overwhelmingly about delivering public services in the best way at the least cost. And there's been a tendency in the past for governments to see procurement as a tool, in the same way that spending money, legislating, regulating, these are tools to deliver policy objectives. They've seen public procurement as a tool to deliver wider policy objectives, and we should oppose that.
But can I just come in on this? I mean, if you look at the Cabinet Office numbers on total volume of public procurement, if there was only 1 apprentice employed for every £1 million of public procurement, that would probably create about 230,000 apprentices. Now, that would cut youth unemployment by a quarter. Isn't that worth it? Given what you've just said, I mean, why should you not use public procurement to achieve policy objectives if something is like that would be pretty simple to do?
Well, because
transform our youth unemployment landscape.
Yeah, because I'm afraid I'm a purist in this. I want lots of firms, whether they're government suppliers or not, to take on apprentices. I want suppliers to government to have highly trained workforces, trained to the right level to deliver services and to the quality that we have specified. How they do it, that has to be for them. And once you start overlaying the contracts with the requirement that you've got to do things in a particular way, you've got to take on a certain number of apprentices, you're locking, maybe only in small ways, and I appreciate there's a wider benefit, but you're actually locking them into ways of doing things which may not be the right way to do it.
But it exists already, because if you just take a local example, if a developer wants to build a housing project, in order to get that contract, they have to fulfil community objectives and fund sports centres or whatever it might be. And there is no difference. And given that we face a economic crisis and a youth unemployment crisis, this would be a very worthy objective. And also, given that companies who get public procurement projects, they're in essence benefiting from the taxpayer, surely they should then give something back to the taxpayer. And for them, those individual companies, to have at least 1 apprentice is pretty small beer.
I'm sure it would be, but once you have 1 pint of small beer, then others get added on, and it becomes quite a large beer at the end of it. I think that was about the end of that metaphor for these purposes. One doesn't want to be excessively dogmatic about it, but I think we really have to be very careful. I don't think your analogy with a housing developer, is quite apt with respects. I think what you're talking about there is the planning gain, effectively, which needs to be deployed into something which is for the community benefit. And that's not about taxpayers' money. That's actually about gaining something for the community as part of the developer's upside in the development. And when you talk about suppliers giving something back to the taxpayer, well, what the taxpayer wants is the service to be provided in the best way.
But they would get that service, and you'd also save the exchequer money, because there'd be a fall in youth unemployment.
Well, it wouldn't save the exchequer money, because this is not something that the supplier puts back. This is something the supplier then asks the taxpayer to pay for as part of the cost of providing the service.
They wouldn't be allowed to do that. That would be part of the contract, that they would have to employ an apprentice.
Well, I promise you, it just goes into the cost. It goes into the price. It's not a free good.
Mr. Elphick. Can I just ask you about the